I stood in front of the bathroom mirror with scissors in my hand, my reflection showing 15 years of carefully maintained hair that reached past my waist. My roommate Melissa burst through the door, her face pale with something that looked like genuine fear. "Jenny, what are you doing?" I didn't answer immediately. I just lifted the scissors to the first section of hair, right at shoulder length, and cut. The sound was crisp, final. Melissa's gasp was louder than the snip of metal through keratin. "Stop! You can't! That's your signature look!" I met her eyes in the mirror, and I saw something I'd seen 1,000 times before, in another life that ended 3 months ago when I was 28 years old. Desperation. The kind that comes from watching your carefully constructed identity start to crumble. "It's just hair, Melissa." But we both knew it wasn't. In my previous life, I had been the girl with the beautiful long hair. From age 13 to 28, I had never cut it shorter than my waist. My mother used to brush it every night when I was younger, telling me it was my crown, my glory, the thing that made me special. I believed her. I built my entire identity around it. And Melissa had noticed. We met in college, randomly assigned as roommates in our freshman year. I was shy, bookish, the kind of girl who hid behind her hair and her studies. Melissa was charming, outgoing, the kind of person who could make friends with anyone. At first, I was grateful for her friendship. She drew me out of my shell, included me in social events, made me feel less invisible. But slowly, carefully, she began to copy me. It started small. She bought the same brand of shampoo I used, asked me about my hair care routine, complimented my hair constantly. I was flattered. I didn't see the hunger in her eyes, the way she would touch her own shoulder-length hair with dissatisfaction while staring at mine. By sophomore year, she had grown her hair to match mine. Same length, same style. She even dyed it the same shade of chestnut brown. When people complimented her hair, she would smile and say nothing. When they complimented mine, she would find a way to insert herself into the conversation, to make it about both of us, to blur the line between original and copy. I told myself it was innocent, imitation as flattery. But it didn't stop there. She started dressing like me, studying the same subjects, adopting my mannerisms, my speech patterns, even the way I held my coffee cup. Our mutual friends would laugh and call us twins, and I would laugh too, uncomfortable but unable to articulate why. Melissa would link her arm through mine and agree enthusiastically, as if being mistaken for me was the highest compliment she could receive. I remember one particular incident in our sophomore year. We were at a campus art exhibition, and I had submitted a watercolour piece I'd worked on for months. It was personal, abstract, inspired by my childhood memories of my grandmother's garden. When Melissa saw it, she stared at it for a long time, silent. 2 weeks later, she submitted her own piece to a different campus show. It was almost identical in style, colour palette, even subject matter. When I saw it, my stomach dropped. But when I tried to say something, she looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. "I was inspired by your work," she said. "Isn't that what art is about, inspiring each other?" I didn't know how to argue with that. So I didn't. By junior year, I started to feel like I was disappearing. Every choice I made, every preference I expressed, became something she absorbed and reflected back at me. I couldn't develop my own identity because she was always there, copying, mirroring, erasing the distinction between us. I tried to confront her once, gently, carefully, trying not to hurt her feelings. "Melissa, do you think maybe you could try to develop your own style? People keep mixing us up." Her face had crumpled with such genuine hurt that I immediately backed down. "I just admire you so much, Jenny. You have such great taste. I didn't realize it bothered you. I'm sorry." I felt like a monster. I apologized. I told her it was fine. And she kept copying. But the real betrayal came later. After college, we moved to the city together, got an apartment together, I got a job at a design firm, something I'd worked hard for, built my portfolio for years. Melissa worked in retail while she figured things out. I supported her, let her pay less rent when money was tight, listened to her relationship problems, gave her advice about her career, and then she applied to my company. She didn't tell me. She used the knowledge she'd gained from living with me. My work stories, my portfolio techniques, even some of my actual designs that I'd shown her, to create her own application. She got an interview, and because she looked like me, talked like me, presented herself with my mannerisms and my aesthetic, they hired her. Not just hired her. They gave her the senior designer position I had been working toward for 3 years. When I found out, I was devastated. When I confronted her, she cried and said she hadn't known I wanted that position, that she needed the opportunity, that I should be happy for her. She made me feel selfish for being hurt, and I believed her. I swallowed my pain and congratulated her. That was my biggest mistake. Over the next 5 years, she systematically took everything from me. Every project I worked on, she would find a way to claim credit. Every relationship I built at work, she would insert herself into and eventually replace me. She became the favourite, the one everyone loved, while I faded into the background. I remember the Reynolds project particularly well. I had spent 3 months developing a complete rebrand for a major client. Late nights, weekends, pouring everything I had into it. I was proud of that work. It was the best thing I'd ever done. Melissa had watched me work on it, asked questions, offered suggestions that I stupidly incorporated. When it came time to present to the client, she volunteered to help with the presentation. I was grateful. During the meeting, she presented my work as if it were a collaborative effort. She used "we" constantly. She fielded questions with answers based on my research, my concepts, my vision. And when the client loved it, when they specifically praised the innovative approach, she smiled and accepted their compliments without once looking at me. Afterward, our boss congratulated her on leading such a successful project. I stood there, invisible, while she glowed with stolen glory. When I tried to speak up, to claim my contribution, I sounded petty, desperate, like I was trying to steal credit from her. She had positioned herself so perfectly as the project lead that my protests only made me look bad. I stopped protesting after that. Even the man I loved, David, a photographer I'd been dating for 2 years, she took him too, not through seduction, but through slow replacement. She befriended him, started joining our dates, became so intertwined in our relationship that when I finally tried to set a boundary, he chose her. He said she was more easygoing, less complicated. He said I had become bitter and jealous. I had, because I was watching my life being lived by someone else. The day David left me for her, I cut my finger while cooking dinner. Just a small cut, nothing serious, but I watched the blood well up and thought, this is the only thing that's really mine. This pain, this blood, everything else belongs to her now. At 28, I had nothing that was truly mine. My hair was the last thing that was still original, still me. Melissa had never cut hers either. We were still twins, still mirrors of each other, except now I was the dim reflection and she was the bright original. And then I died. A car accident, quick, almost painless. I remembered the screech of brakes, the moment of weightlessness, and then nothing. Except it wasn't nothing. I woke up. I woke up in my college dorm room, 19 years old, with Melissa's voice calling through the door asking if I wanted to grab breakfast. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Then I saw the calendar on my wall. September, sophomore year. The year she started growing her hair. I lay in bed for a long moment, my heart pounding, my mind racing through possibilities. Was this real? Had I actually gone back in time? Or was this some kind of dying hallucination, my brain giving me one last fantasy before everything ended. I touched my face. Younger. I touched my hair, shorter, just past my shoulders. I looked around the room and saw textbooks I remembered, posters I'd forgotten about, a life I'd lived before. This was real. Somehow, impossibly, I had been given a second chance. I remembered everything. Every moment of manipulation, every stolen opportunity, every piece of myself I had lost. And I understood something I hadn't understood before. Melissa hadn't copied me because she admired me. She had copied me because she wanted to be me. And when copying wasn't enough, she wanted to erase me entirely. This time, I would not let her. I got out of bed, went to the mirror, and looked at my long hair. In this timeline, it was just past my shoulders, still growing. I touched it gently, remembering all the years I had maintained it, all the identity I had wrapped around it. And I decided, not this time. "Give me a minute," I called to Melissa. "I'll meet you there." I heard her footsteps retreat. I sat on my bed and began to plan. The first rule of my new life: I would give Melissa nothing to copy. I stopped talking about my classes, my interests, my plans. When she asked what I was studying, I gave vague answers. When she asked about my hair routine, I changed the subject. When she complimented my clothes, I said thank you and nothing else. At first, she didn't notice. She was too busy trying to grow her hair, too focused on becoming my mirror. But I was changing the reflection. I started taking classes she knew nothing about. Photography, business management, web design. I didn't mention them. I didn't post about them. I just quietly built skills she couldn't copy because she didn't know they existed. The photography class was particularly significant. I'd never taken it in my first life, always meaning to, but never finding the time. Now, 3 evenings a week, I would tell Melissa I was at the library and instead slip into the arts building, into a dark room that smelled of chemicals and possibility. My professor, an older woman named Patricia who had worked for National Geographic in her youth, saw something in me. She pushed me, challenged me, helped me develop an eye for composition that was entirely my own. I never shared my photos with Melissa. I kept them in a locked portfolio case under my bed. I made new friends, separately from her. I would tell her I was going to the library, and I was. But then I'd meet people at coffee shops after, build relationships in spaces she couldn't infiltrate because she didn't know they existed. There was Kevin, a computer science major who taught me basic coding. There was Amara, a business student who introduced me to entrepreneurship concepts. There was James, a quiet philosophy major who helped me understand the nature of identity and self in ways that would later become armour against Melissa's attempts at erasure. I started dressing differently. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually. Simpler clothes, less distinctive style. Nothing she could point to and copy because there was nothing memorable about it. I was making myself invisible, but this time on purpose, by choice. And I grew my hair. I grew it because I knew she would too. I grew it because I needed her to commit to it, to invest in it, to build her identity around it just like I had done before. I needed her to believe that my long hair was still my signature, still my defining feature, because I was going to take it away. By the end of sophomore year, Melissa's hair matched mine again. Waist length, carefully maintained, identical shade. People called us twins. She beamed with pride. I smiled and said nothing. But I was different now. I wasn't the girl who needed her hair to feel special. I had been building something else, something internal, something she could never copy. I had confidence that came from competence, not appearance. I had skills I developed in secret. I had relationships based on my actual personality, not on the aesthetic I presented. I had learned to be invisible when I needed to be, and present when it mattered. And I was patient. There were moments when the old patterns tried to reassert themselves. Melissa would buy the same coffee drink as me, wear similar colours, mimic my body language. Each time I felt a flash of the old anger, the old helplessness. But I breathed through it. I reminded myself, she's copying a ghost. The real me is hidden where she can't reach. One afternoon in junior year, we were studying together in our apartment. She looked up from her textbook and said, "Jenny, can I ask you something?" I felt my shoulders tense, but I kept my voice casual. "Sure." "Do you ever feel like we're drifting apart?" I met her eyes. She looked genuinely troubled, confused. She could sense that something had changed between us, but she couldn't identify what. "We're just growing up," I said carefully, "becoming our own people." "But we're still the same," she insisted, touching her long hair. "Look at us. We're still twins." "On the outside, maybe." She frowned, unsatisfied with this answer, but she didn't push. She couldn't articulate what was wrong because it wasn't anything she could see. The change was internal, invisible, mine. Junior year, I got an internship at a design firm. A small one, different from the one where Melissa would eventually take my job. I didn't tell her about it. I told her I was working at a coffee shop. She lost interest immediately. Service jobs weren't glamorous enough to copy. I worked hard. I learned everything I could. I built my portfolio, but I kept it private, locked away where she couldn't see it. I made connections with people in the industry, but I never brought them home, never mentioned their names. My supervisor at the firm, a woman named Victoria, became something of a mentor. She was in her 40s, successful, with a distinctive short haircut and a no-nonsense attitude. She noticed my skills quickly. "You have talent," she told me after reviewing my first project, "but more importantly, you have vision, your own vision. That's rarer than you think." I almost cried hearing those words. In my first life, no one had ever said that to me. I'd always been seen as competent but unremarkable, always in someone else's shadow. "Don't hide it," Victoria continued. "I see a lot of young designers who try to copy what's popular, what's safe. You're not doing that. Keep it up." I promised her I would. Melissa, meanwhile, was still copying the ghost of who I used to be. She grew her hair longer. She bought the same brands I used to talk about. She dated the kind of guys I used to date. She was living my old life, not knowing that I'd already moved on. By senior year, I had a job offer, a good one at a prestigious firm. Victoria had recommended me personally, and they'd been impressed enough to offer me a position starting after graduation. I accepted it quietly, told Melissa I'd gotten a position at a small startup. She congratulated me with visible relief. She'd been worried I'd get something too impressive, something she'd have to compete with. I let her think I was less successful. I let her think she was winning. The day I signed my contract, I went back to my apartment and stood in front of the mirror for a long time. My hair was longer now than it had ever been in my first life, reaching almost to my hips. It was beautiful. It was also a cage I'd built deliberately, a trap I'd set with myself as bait. Soon, I promised my reflection. Soon. After graduation, I told Melissa I couldn't afford to get an apartment with her. I said I needed to live somewhere cheaper, closer to my job. She was disappointed, but understanding. She found her own place with another girl, someone named Ashley, who seemed quiet and agreeable. I watched from a distance as she tried to recreate our dynamic with someone else. It didn't work the same way. Ashley had her own strong sense of style, her own interests, her own boundaries. When Melissa tried to copy her clothes, Ashley laughed and said she was flattered, but suggested Melissa might want to develop her own look. Melissa floundered, uncertain without someone to copy. She started calling me more often, wanting to meet up, wanting to maintain our connection. I agreed to coffee dates every few weeks, always careful to share just enough to seem normal, but never enough to give her new material. I was 23 now, 4 years into my second chance. My hair was longer than ever, almost to my hips. I maintained it carefully, posted photos of it occasionally on social media. Let it remain my most visible feature. Melissa, living across the city, kept hers exactly the same length. Even apart, she was still mirroring me. I was counting on it. During this time, I threw myself into my work. The firm I joined was innovative, fast-paced, exactly the kind of environment where someone with real skills could thrive. I worked on campaigns for major brands, developed concepts that won awards, built a reputation that was entirely mine. But I was careful. My social media showed a modest life. Nice enough, but nothing spectacular. Nothing that would trigger Melissa's need to compete and replace. I kept my achievements quiet, my successes private. To the outside world, I was doing fine. Only Victoria and my colleagues knew I was excelling. "Why do you hide it?" Victoria asked me once when I declined to be featured in an industry article. "You should be proud of your work." "I am," I told her, "but I'm not ready for public attention yet." She looked at me with understanding that went deeper than my words. "Protecting yourself from someone." I nodded. "Smart," she said. "But eventually you'll have to step into the light. Talent like yours can't stay hidden forever." "I know," I said. "I'm just waiting for the right moment." At 25, I was doing well. Very well. I'd been promoted twice at my firm, built a reputation for my innovative design work, established myself as someone to watch in the industry. But I kept it quiet. My social media showed a modest life. Nice enough, but nothing spectacular. Nothing that would trigger Melissa's need to compete and replace. We still met for coffee every few months. She would talk about her jobs. She'd gone through 3 already, never quite finding her place. She would talk about her dating life, her struggles, her uncertainties, and she would always compliment my hair. I could never cut mine, she'd say, touching her own long locks. "It's such a part of who I am now." I would nod and agree. "Me neither. Can you imagine?" During one of these meetings, she told me about her most recent job change. She'd left her marketing position at a startup to work at a small design agency. As she described it, I felt a chill. It was remarkably similar to the trajectory I'd taken in my first life. "They really value creativity there," she said, her eyes bright. "I feel like I'm finally finding my place." I smiled and encouraged her, but inside, I was calculating. She was still following the ghost of my first life's path, still trying to walk in footsteps that no longer existed. The divergence between us was growing, but she couldn't see it yet because she was still measuring herself against an old version of me. I was waiting for the right moment. That moment came 3 months before my 28th birthday, the same age I'd been when I died in my previous life. Melissa called me excited. She'd gotten an interview at a prestigious design firm, not the one from my previous timeline, but a similar one. A competitor to my company, actually. She wanted advice on her portfolio, on how to present herself, on what to say. This was it, the cycle trying to repeat itself. She was reaching for the same life she'd stolen from me before. But this time, I was ready. "That's wonderful, Melissa," I said warmly. "I'm so happy for you. Why don't you come over tomorrow? I'll help you prepare." She arrived with her portfolio, her long hair perfectly styled, wearing an outfit similar to ones I used to wear years ago. She didn't notice that I no longer dressed that way. She was copying a memory, not the present reality. I looked through her portfolio. It was good. She'd learned a lot over the years, developed real skills. But I could see my influence everywhere, my old influence. Techniques I'd mentioned years ago, aesthetics I'd described when we were younger, even some concepts that were similar to work I'd done in my first life that I'd once shared with her. "This is really impressive," I said honestly. "You've worked hard." She glowed with pride. "I learned from the best." I smiled. "The interview is next week, right?" "Tuesday." "Perfect. That gives you time to prepare." We spent the afternoon going over her presentation. I gave her real advice, good advice. I wanted her to do well at that interview. I wanted her to get that job. Because I had already turned down their offer 2 months ago. They'd approached me, actually, tried to recruit me away from my current firm. It was a good offer, impressive. But I knew Melissa's patterns. I knew she'd eventually reach for something like this. So I declined, and I'd done it in a way that made them keep looking for someone with a similar profile. Someone exactly like Melissa. Melissa got the job. She was ecstatic. She called me immediately, crying happy tears, thanking me for helping her. She said it was her dream position, the breakthrough she'd been waiting for. I congratulated her sincerely. I was genuinely happy for her. This time, she'd earned it honestly, with her own work. This time, she wasn't stealing my opportunity. She was taking one I deliberately left for her. "We should celebrate," I said. "Why don't you come over this weekend?" She agreed enthusiastically. The week between her job offer and our celebration, I prepared. I bought the scissors. I practiced the motion in my mind. I thought about everything that had led to this moment. 9 years of planning, of patience, of building a life she couldn't touch while maintaining the illusion that she still knew me. I thought about my first life, about the woman I'd been at 28. Lost, erased, nothing. I thought about the woman I was now, successful, independent, whole. And I thought about what would happen when I finally cut away the last thread connecting us. That Saturday, Melissa arrived at my apartment with champagne. She was radiant, bubbling with excitement about her new job, her new beginning. We toasted, we talked, we laughed. It was like old times, except this time I was fully in control. After a while, she excused herself to use the bathroom. When she came back, her face was strange. "Jenny, why do you have scissors on the bathroom counter?" I looked at her calmly. "Oh, those. I've been thinking about cutting my hair." The colour drained from her face. "What? No, you can't. Your hair it's you. Is it?" I stood up and walked to the bathroom, Melissa following closely behind. I picked up the scissors, held them loosely. I've been thinking about what actually defines me. And I realised it's not my hair. It's not my appearance at all. "But you've been growing it for so long," she said, and I could hear the panic creeping into her voice. "We both have. It's our thing. Your thing, maybe." I pulled my hair over my shoulder, running my fingers through it one last time. "But I've been wondering what I'd look like with a change, a fresh start." "You'd look different." She was staring at my hair like it was a lifeline. "You wouldn't look like yourself." "Exactly." I met her eyes in the mirror. "I want to look like myself, not like someone else's idea of who I should be." I lifted the scissors. "Wait!" Melissa's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. Her grip was tight, almost painful. "Don't. Please, just think about it more. Don't make a rash decision." I gently removed her hand. "It's not rash, Melissa. I've been thinking about this for a very long time." And I cut. The first section fell to the floor, and Melissa made a sound like she was in physical pain. I cut another section, then another. Shoulder length, clean and even. Years of growth falling away in minutes. "Stop!" Melissa was crying now, actual tears streaming down her face. "Jenny, stop! You're ruining it!" I paused, looked at her reflection. "Ruining what?" "Everything!" She was hysterical now, her hands clutching her own long hair. "You can't do this. We're supposed to be..." "You can't just change." "Change what, Melissa?" She was shouting now. "We're the same. We've always been the same. That's what makes us special." I put the scissors down and turned to face her directly. "We're not the same. We've never been the same. And that's the problem, isn't it?" She stared at me, her face blotchy and red, her breath coming in gasps. Her hands were still in her hair, clutching it like she was afraid it would disappear too. "You don't admire me," I said quietly. "You want to be me. You've spent years copying everything I do, trying to erase the line between us. But I'm not a template, Melissa. I'm a person. I wanted to be like you," she sobbed. "You made it look so easy. Being yourself, being confident. I didn't know how to be anyone, so I became you. And what happens when I change? When I become someone you can't copy?" She had no answer. She just stood there crying, her whole body shaking. I picked up the scissors again and finished cutting my hair. When I was done, it brushed my shoulders light and free. I looked different. I looked like myself. Melissa sat on the bathroom floor, hugging her knees, staring at the pile of hair like I'd cut off a piece of her own soul. "What am I supposed to do now?" she whispered. "Be yourself," I said. "Figure out who that is." She looked up at me with lost, frightened eyes. "I don't know who that is." "Then find out." I left her there and went back to the living room. After a while, she got up and left without saying goodbye. I heard the door close quietly behind her. Through the window, I watched her walk to her car. She moved slowly, mechanically, like someone in shock. I gathered the hair from the bathroom floor and threw it away. Then, I stood in front of the mirror again, running my hands through my new short hair. It felt strange. Light. Free. For the first time in 9 years, in 2 lifetimes, I looked like someone Melissa couldn't copy. I looked like me. The next few weeks were chaos for Melissa, though I only heard about it through mutual friends. She called in sick to her new job multiple times. She cancelled plans. She stopped posting on social media. According to our friend Rachel, she'd locked herself in her apartment and wouldn't answer the door. "She's having some kind of breakdown," Rachel told me over coffee. "Did something happen between you two?" "I cut my hair," I said simply. Rachel looked at my new shoulder-length cut, confused. "So, it looks great." For Melissa, it was more than a haircut. Rachel didn't understand, but she didn't need to. This wasn't her story. I felt a twinge of guilt during those weeks. Not for cutting my hair, that was my right, my choice, but for knowing what it would do to her, for using that knowledge deliberately. Was I cruel? Maybe, but I'd spent a lifetime being erased. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to break what's trying to consume you. After 2 weeks, Melissa emerged. She went back to work, started answering messages again, returned to some semblance of normal life. But she was different. Fragile, like the foundation of her identity had cracked and she was trying to function on unstable ground. I watched from a distance, not cruel, but not involved. This was her journey now. She needed to find herself without using me as a mirror. A month after I cut my hair, I ran into Melissa at a coffee shop. It wasn't planned, genuinely coincidental. She was sitting alone, laptop open, looking tired but focused. "Hi," I said simply. She looked up and I saw her eyes go to my hair, then away quickly. "Hi. Can I sit?" She hesitated, then nodded. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she spoke. "I started therapy. That's good. My therapist says I have identity issues, that I don't know who I am without external validation." She laughed bitterly. "Apparently, copying my roommate for a decade is a symptom." "Did you tell her about the hair thing?" "Yeah, she said it was a trigger. That when you cut your hair, I felt like I was losing my sense of self because I built my identity around being like you." She looked at me directly. "She's right. I know." "Did you know," she asked, "when you cut it? Did you know it would affect me like this?" I could have lied, but I didn't. "Yes." She absorbed this, nodded slowly. "Why?" because you needed to break. I kept my voice gentle but honest. You needed to stop living my life and start living yours. And you wouldn't do that as long as you could keep copying me. So you took away the thing you knew I'd built my whole identity around. I took away something that was mine to take. My hair, my choice. The fact that it destroyed you says more about your foundation than my actions. She was quiet for a long time. Then, I hate that you're right. I know. I started cutting my hair too, she said, and I saw that it was true. Her hair was shorter now, just below her shoulders. Different from mine, layered, styled differently. Not because of you. Because I realised I'd been maintaining it for the wrong reasons. It was heavy, literally and metaphorically. How does it feel? Lighter. She smiled slightly. Scary, but lighter. We talked for another hour. Really talked, maybe for the first time in our entire relationship. She told me about her therapy sessions, her realizations, her fears about discovering who she was outside of my shadow. I told her about my job, my real job, the success I'd been hiding. She was shocked, hurt that I'd hidden it, but also understanding. You couldn't let me copy that, she said. I would have tried to take it. Yes, I would have destroyed it. And you, yes. She cried a little, apologised. I didn't say it was okay because it wasn't. But I accepted her apology. When we parted ways, we didn't make plans to meet again. We weren't friends anymore, not really, but we weren't enemies either. We were just two people who had been entangled for too long, finally separate. 6 months later, I heard that Melissa was doing well. She'd been promoted at her job, found her own design style that was genuinely original. She'd cut her hair shorter into a pixie cut that looked nothing like anything I'd ever worn. She'd started dating someone she'd met on her own, in her own life. According to Rachel, who was still friends with both of us, Melissa had stopped talking about me entirely. Not out of anger, but because I was no longer relevant to her identity. She was building herself from scratch, finding her own preferences, her own style, her own voice. I was proud of her, in a strange way. It took courage to dismantle yourself and start over. As for me, I was thriving. My career had continued to grow. I'd been made creative director at my firm. I'd started dating again. A writer named Thomas who loved me for who I actually was, not for any image I projected. We talked about books and ideas and futures, and he never once tried to change me or copy me. He just appreciated me. I grew my hair back out eventually, but only to my shoulders. I liked it there. It was long enough to feel feminine, short enough to feel free. And it was my choice, made for my reasons, not to fulfill anyone else's expectations. The man who would have been David in my previous life, the photographer. I met him at a gallery opening. He asked for my number. I politely declined. I'd learned that some people from past lives were meant to stay there, and some futures were worth creating from nothing, rather than recreating from memory. On my 28th birthday, the age I died in my previous life, I threw a small party at my apartment. Thomas was there, along with Rachel and a few other close friends. Melissa wasn't invited, and that was okay. Our story had ended months ago. As we celebrated, I caught my reflection in the window. Short hair, genuine smile, surrounded by people who knew the real me. I looked nothing like the woman I'd been in my previous life at this age. That woman had been a ghost, erased by someone else's hunger. This woman was solid, real, untouchable. Thomas came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" "Just reflecting," I said. "On second chances." "Did you get one?" "I took one." He kissed my temple and we rejoined the party. Later that night, after everyone had left, Thomas and I sat on my balcony, looking at the city lights. He was quiet, thoughtful, the way he got when he was working something out in his mind. "Can I ask you something?" he finally said. "Always. That roommate of yours, the one you don't talk about, Rachel mentioned her today, said she's doing really well now." "She is. Were you the reason she had that breakdown last year?" I thought about lying, about softening it. But Thomas deserved honesty. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Did she deserve it?" "That's a complicated question." "Try me." So I told him. Not everything, not about the rebirth, not about my previous life. But I told him about Melissa copying me, about how it had affected me, about the hair and what it represented, about how I'd deliberately broken the pattern because nothing else would have worked. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "That's intense," he finally said. "But I understand why you did it." "Do you think I was cruel?" "I think you were surviving." He squeezed my hand. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is force them to stand on their own feet, even if it hurts. I leaned my head against his shoulder, grateful for his understanding, for the fact that he saw me clearly and still chose to stay. "I don't regret it," I said quietly. "I spent too long being invisible, being erased. If I had to break her to save myself, then that's what I had to do." "You didn't just break her," Thomas observed. "You freed her too. She's thriving now, right? Found herself?" "According to Rachel, yes." "Then maybe it was the best thing you could have done for both of you." I thought about that. About Melissa with her pixie cut and her original designs and her own life. About how she'd finally stopped being my shadow and become her own person. About how we'd both had to break before we could become whole. "Maybe," I agreed. A year after I cut my hair, Melissa reached out. A simple text. "Thank you." I understood what she meant. "Thank you for cutting your hair. Thank you for breaking me. Thank you for forcing me to build myself." I texted back, "You did the work." She sent back a smile emoji, and that was the end of it. I'm 32 now, 4 years past the age I died. Every day past 28 feels like bonus time, a gift I gave myself by choosing differently. My company launched a new design initiative that's been featured in industry publications. Thomas and I moved in together. I cut my hair shorter last month just because I felt like it, and then let it grow again when the mood struck. Hair is just hair now, not identity, not power, just part of how I move through the world. And I never think about Melissa anymore. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, not with anything. She's living her own life now, successful in her own right, and I'm living mine. Our paths diverged when I picked up those scissors, and they've stayed separate in the healthiest way possible. Sometimes people ask me if I have any regrets about how I handled things. I tell them no. I don't regret the years of planning, the careful invisibility, the calculated moment when I cut away everything she'd built her identity around. Because I understand something now that I didn't understand in my first life. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes friendship isn't enough. Sometimes you have to choose yourself, even when it feels cruel, even when it hurts someone else. I didn't destroy Melissa. I freed us both. My victory was never about hurting her. It was about becoming someone she couldn't copy. Not because I was too different, but because I finally knew who I was at my core. Identity isn't in your hair or your style or your image. It's in the choices you make when no one's watching, the skills you build in silence, the person you become when you stop performing for others. I look at my reflection now, hair at whatever length feels right today, eyes clear, smile genuine, and I see someone who can't be replicated. Not because I'm special or unique in some external way, but because I know who I am, in a way that can't be photographed or copied or stolen. I am Jenny, not Jenny with the long hair, not Jenny who looks like someone else, Not Jenny who needs external validation to know her worth. Just Jenny. And that's enough. That's everything. The thing about second chances is that they're not really about changing the past. They're about understanding it well enough to build a different future. I got my second chance, and I used it not for revenge, but for rebirth. Real rebirth. The kind that comes from knowing yourself so completely that no one else can define you. I didn't need to destroy Melissa to win. I just needed to become untouchable. And in the end, that saved us both.